Okay, welcome back, everybody, to another Wednesday night class in Fundamental Judaism. Last week, we ended off on a note about why good things happen to bad people, and one of the reasons that the Mechtam Eliyahu Rav Dessler gave us is similar to the nation of Moab. And sometimes there's a need for a person that will come out of this generation, that individual, and they get held on until the person that is going to serve a tremendous purpose for the Jewish nation. And in that example, it's Rus, that because she came out of the nation of Moab, if we would have destroyed them generations earlier, we would never have had that tremendous person, that amazing woman. So therefore, Hashem will leave people around, so to speak, for the sake of something that will come out of them, something great that will come out. So now he goes a little bit, he discusses the idea why a person might call it a bad person, might have good things going for them in this world. So he starts off and he says that a person is a bad guy. So a person, bad person. And we see the person and we're like, this guy is just rotten to the core. So why is everything working out? So we assume that maybe there's some sort of rachmanus, some sort of mercy from Shemayim, from Hashem. Hashem is okay, being merciful. So it's not the case. It's not coming out of mercy why Hashem is giving the person, benefits or whatever it might be. What is it coming from? So it says, first we have to understand, we mentioned this last week, that we'd get to this, that there are many reasons why this could occur. We're going to come into some reasons, and there are even some reasons that we just can't understand. And we have to be able to accept that, and that's okay, because we are talking about God who is being beyond our comprehension. And therefore it's okay that there are things that we can't comprehend. That makes sense. But within a realm, within a space, there are points that we can that we have seen from the Gemara that teaches us these things, from Chazal, and therefore there is information at least that we can have something to wrap our heads around to satisfy some curiosity that we might have. And he says as follows: he says we have to talk about how we fulfill commandments. Okay? And he says how does a person commandments? So we touched on this many weeks ago when we talked about from Rabbi Schwartz's Sefer Bilvavi Mishkan Evna, that we have to have a certain connection towards Hashem. Our actions, instead of just being very surface level actions, they have to be deep, heartfelt actions with the purpose and the goal of connecting to Hashem in mind. That's the ultimate purpose of every good deed that we do. So a person can do a good deed with that in mind, having that thought process in advance and saying, Hashem, I'm going to perform this kindness because I know this is a way that I can connect to you, and I want to have a deeper relationship with you, and therefore I'll fulfill that mitzvah. That's one way. The other way is we are just naturally good people. We're all good people, right? Right? We're all raised that if you see somebody that needs help, you help. And that's the way we're raised. And we're taught to be kind. There's a certain amount of required helpfulness that we're taught as children, and that us to be responsible when we get older. In fact, there are studies in psychology, I'm sure you can help us out with that required helpfulness is actually something that gives children the ability to have a certain amount of grit when they get older, and they're able to withstand different trials because they're just used to being able to look for other things to do, and it almost causes distraction from whatever suffering they might be going through or whatever it might be. And these are different things. So we're taught to be good people. So when we do an action, because just naturally that's what we would do, and okay, we know in the back of our head, we know that God is there and he wants us to do this, but we're not really focusing on him. That's a different type of action. It's not as deeply connected to Hashem as it can be. Not to say we shouldn't do those, obviously. We do those as much as we can and also add in the thought of relationship to Hashem. But these are the different types of ways that we can fulfill mitzvahs and fulfill good deeds.
Isn't it, in a way, a better action that is done purely because you, like a child doesn't understand? I'm thinking about my grandchild.
Yeah.
He doesn't understand about mitzvahs, and even though he goes to a Jewish day school, but he's a very kind-hearted person. And to me, that's better. I mean, if somebody says, you're supposed to do this because it's a mitzvah, you were told,
right.
But to just because you feel it, to me, that's even better than the person who does it because there's a list and he's
got to check this. Absolutely. There's no question about it. What the paradigm is that we do it for the sake of, because God commanded me to do it. That's the driving force behind it, and that is what becomes my natural instinct. Automatically, I want to help because this is how it wants me to live my life. Right. So it's not to divorce it from the what's called the knee-jerk reaction to just be a kind-hearted person, but a knee-jerk reaction should have a foundation of Hashem is guiding me. This is a fulfillment of God's will.
Somewhere I learned that when a child is born knowing all of Torah,
Mm-hmm.
and then forgets it all.
No, it's before he's born, he knows.
Before he knows all of Torah, and then he forgets
And
it
then
all.
they hit
Very
it
good.
here.
Very good.
This is amazing. But is it possible that the child kept a little bit of that Torah?
Oh, definitely. There's a lot of talk about this. There's a lot of discussion about this point. So the idea is that the mother's womb. So then there's a malach, there's an angel that comes and sits and learns the entire Torah with the child. The first thing that we teach children when they're learning Gemara, the first Gemara they learn is a parak called Elu Mitzios. These are lost items items that you found that you're responsible to return, lost items that you're not responsible to return. There's a whole discussion on legalities of finding a lost object. Right? Why do we teach that as the first thing that we teach children, Gemara? Because the Torah that they are now learning, that they're now getting a real connection to, was theirs. They had it. And they already learned it all. And they just have to find it. They just have to look for it. It's a lost object to them that they just have to seek it and find. So there is a lot of discussion. You see some people that they have a certain drive towards very halacha oriented, or you have certain people that are very oriented to understanding Chumash or Gemara, and people have different areas of Torah that is naturally attractive to them. And one of the thoughts that is because what they learned in the womb, this is something that that rings a bell to them, and it's something that their neshama just automatically connects, and that's why they're drawn to it automatically. So so that's right. So that's what we want. We want to have that just our from deep inside our soul. We're drawn to doing good things and caring for other people and studying the Torah and connecting to Hashem. It has to be a very natural thing. Absolutely. But these are the two ways. These are two ways a person can fulfill a mitzvah. So now, says Rav Dessler, he says, what does the next world look like? Person after 120 goes up to the next world. What do we do all day? Right? So it's the rabbis teach us that tzaddikim yoshvim, that the righteous people, they sit around, the nehenim miziv Hashem, and they benefit from and bask in the glory of Hashem. Right? So now it means that upstairs after 120, what we will be doing if we earn it and merit it is that we're gonna just have this automatic relationship and connection to Hashem that we're just going to be drawn to and continuously want to be part of. Right? We had a discussion many weeks ago that if we could take all the positive encounters that a person has and those positive, put that all into one moment, and then take everybody in your family and put all positive feelings and put all of that into one moment, and take everybody in the city and everybody in the town, the country, and everybody in the entire world, and put it all into one moment of utter bliss that doesn't even compare to what it means for us to just connect with Hashem upstairs in the next world. So says Rav Dessler, says a person that is going to desire and want to sit and benefit from that is going to get his reward there in the next world. That's where he wants the reward. A person who does commandments, he fulfills things because this is what I know Hashem wants from me. I want to connect deeply to Hashem, and therefore I'm going to do these things in a more serious way, intentionally, more purposefully. So Hashem says, great, that's what you want. You want connection? Okay, after 120, I'll give it to you the whole day. You'll have all connection you want. But a person who does positive deeds only because, okay, this is what I was taught. It's not about connection to Hashem. It's not connection to God. So then Hashem says, okay, it's not about me. It's not about a connection with Hashem. Okay, so it's not a connection with Hashem. So then there's a possibility of having that reward somewhere else. Where else would we get reward? There's nobody that is so evil that they've never done something nice, right? Everybody's done something. right?
Oh,
Yeah, there's a few exceptions in history, but yeah, an accident. Sorry, mom. Right? So everybody's done something, and therefore they deserve some sort of reward for those kind deeds, whatever those deeds might have been, however small or minute. But where is Hashem going to pay that person back? Hashem's not going to say, "You don't want a relationship with me." So I'm like, that's not the word that I'm not giving to you there. I'm going to give you what you want. You want a reward? Here's your reward. You have, prosperity. You have nothing's going to go bad for you. You're going to have perfect health and so on, because Hashem pays everybody back. Right? There's a famous medrash that talks about Koresh. Okay? In the Purim story, we know that when Achashverosh takes over, he throws this vast party for his delegations, all of his dignitaries that are in his 127 countries. And that party lasted 180 days. Okay, so the Vilna Gaon says that if you look at the pasuk, there are 6 words to describe the wealth that Ahasuerus displayed to all the people there. Okay, and say the 6 different words just to describe all of the wealth that he showed to his dignitaries. Right, he was trying to win them all, show how great he was, and so on. Got it? That was weird. All right. I hope we didn't lose the first half. We'll find out later. Okay. Don't have to blank down on me. It's getting personal. The machines have to get us. So Nebuchadnezzar, he was nuts. And the Gemara says that for the 40 years they the known world, people didn't smile. That's how crazy he was. There's always a fear of something that he might go ahead and do. And what would he do? How did he rule the world? He went from one country to the other, didn't care what it would do to his soldiers. He, threw them out from one country to the next and just had them wipe out one nation after the other. Through his campaign, he collected all the crown jewels from all over the world. He was the sole owner of any real crown jewels that anybody had. He took them all. There was nothing left at the time, right? What did he do? He had a son. Now, him and his son, usually, evil dictators are not very good at relationships, and he did not get along with his son. He had a son, his name was Evil Merodach, and if you read it in English, it would look at it like it says Evil Murdoch, but that's, that's and they did not get along. So Nebuchadnezzar had a crazy thought, and he said, one day I'm going to die, and this kid is going to get everything. I don't like him. I don't want him to have anything. So he had these boats made out of copper that were fashioned. These coppersmiths make these tremendous boats. He loaded them up full of his crown jewels. There were 3 boats, I believe it was. And then they had them built right near the Euphrates River. And he diverted the Euphrates so it should flood the area. And these copper ships got washed away and disappeared. Right?
Wow.
And people came.
The imagination that people have.
So people came. They wanted to find it. People were looking for it. Nobody ever found it. Years later, there was Nebuchadnezzar eventually dies. Evil Merodach doesn't take her if he has a short stint, maybe. And then there was a struggle for the throne, exactly who would be. Eventually, it was a guy named Koresh. Koresh is taking the throne, and he does something very nice for the Jewish people. What does he do? He gives us permission to start building the Beis HaMikdash, to rebuild. He says, okay, we want permission he granted permission. And we started getting things together. Eventually, he stopped it because he was being told by slanderers that we were doing it by letting us build the Beis HaMikdash. Eventually, we would depose him and get rid of him, and that was not our intention, obviously. But that's what they told him, and therefore he got nervous and he stopped. So the Gemara says that Hashem always pays back every good deed, and Koresh therefore deserved the payment. He let us build the Beis HaMikdash. So what was his payment? Hashem put it in his head to Euphrates River. He sent his royal diving team down, and they found the crown jewels. Koresh becomes the owner of these crown jewels. Koresh dies, Ahasuerus takes over the throne eventually, and now Ahasuerus is the one with the jewels, and that's what he's displaying. There's 1,080 pieces that he had, and he was displaying them 6 pieces per day. Okay, that is why it's the 6 words in the pasuk, and that's why it's 180 days. That's how long it took for him to display each piece. But what do we see from there? Korah did something positive. Now, did God say, "Okay, I'll pay you back"? Where do I give people the greatest reward? In the next world. Koresh, nice. That was a nice thing to do, but God doesn't want Koresh sitting next to him upstairs, right? And Koresh didn't want him either. He could care less also. So Hashem said, "I got to give you the reward somewhere. I'll give you what? You want wealth, you want fame, you want whatever it is. Here, it's all yours." Okay. So now, whether Koresh himself was the bad guy or not, whatever, the topic for another time. But the concept is that people sometimes get their reward in this world in order that they should be paid back for the kind deeds that they've done. So even an evil person, if they have any kind deeds, any good things that they've done, so then they'll get paid back in this world. That way, Hashem doesn't have to sit next to them, or they don't sit next to Hashem upstairs in the next world. That would be another reason why it would be Russia B'Tova. That's a good question. That's my pay grade. I get paid for that stuff. I don't know. That's a good question. How all things otherworldly work is there. It's fascinating. There's really 2 areas in the Torah. We have a wealth of information, almost to the detail, but we have absolutely no idea what it means. Right? And one is creation. Right? God created trees. Our concept of a tree only exists after creation. So in the moment of creation, we can't use our concepts to judge, right? Because it's like using a math principle, and in order to understand how the math principle came out, you got to live without that principle first, and then right, it has to be processed in an entirely different way. We have no idea. And the other thing is when Mashiach comes, and after we leave this world, all those things, there's wealth of information. And many commentaries say, we're not going to really understand it until it happens, whether when the Mashiach comes. Person only really knows what goes on upstairs when they get there. So it's a fair question. We don't have the answer for that one. At least I don't. Maybe there's somebody that does. So that is the idea that the Mifta Mela was sharing with us as to why a person might benefit in this world, even though they seem to be a bad person, or even objectively they are. Like, we're not judging, but God can judge. That's his job. So he judges and he says, "This guy's a bad guy. I'm going to give him his reward now. That way he doesn't bother me." And that alludes to the flip side. We'll get more into it a little bit later. But the flip side of why do bad things happen to good people? Things happen to good people. It's a very tough question. Moshe Rabbeinu struggled with the question. This is not something simple, right? So whatever we can say, Moshe Rabbeinu himself asked God, "Well, really? This is what happens?" Right? So it's a fair question. It's a valid question. It requires some sort of understanding. But with this, we can understand a little bit, because on the one hand, the righteous person, he's doing all of his commandments, and he's being kind, and he's caring for everybody because he has this deep, heartfelt connection to Hashem, and everything about it is just coming from that direction. So what is the greatest thing that we can give this person? What does Hashem know this person truly wants? He wants more of that connection. Hashem says, "Great." Okay, there's never been a person, I shouldn't say never, but 99.9% of people that have ever lived on this planet did something wrong. We're not perfect, right? There are a few people, the Mishnah has a list of few people that did no sin and they only died because that's the way life goes. Most of us, we've done something wrong. We're not perfect. Okay? So Hashem says, "I want you to get paid back for it. You have to clean this, it's got to be washed off." So I'd rather you off here in this world, because the ultimate connection, that's in the next world. And that's what you really want. That's the thing you're really looking forward to. So it's going to be painful here, but it's worth the end. And that's why sometimes a good person might have bad things happen to them for the similar idea.
Pie in the sky, by and by.
It's like you're quoting something. I'm not familiar.
It is, I hear it in the Black community, in the Protestant community, that you get your reward in the next life. So you suffer, you're a slave, and everything terrible happens, but when you die, you get a reward.
Mm-hmm.
And I have always thought that was a lousy answer.
Okay, why?
Because, well, first of all, we I mean, let's say this group, we don't suffer. Our lives are just Jim dandy. Everybody's healthy, nobody's dropping bombs on us. There's clean water, there's food, and we're fine. A person who is suffering terribly, it doesn't help them to say, when you die, it'll be okay.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
That is no answer, no comfort to a person who is suffering.
That's right. That's right.
Especially if you think, there was a rabbi, what was his name? Kirshner in Framingham.
Okay.
Yeah,
Recently died.
and he had a child, it's called progeria. The boy was 12 or 13 years old. And he wrote a book called Why Do Bad Things Happen to People? Why did this kid, everybody that knew him, was a bright child, interesting, engaged, and he suffered terribly, that you're 12 years old and you realize you're a year or so. So do you think it made the kid feel better or the parents feel better? No.
Absolutely not.
So I don't buy that.
So this really brings us to we had a little bit of a conversation last week, right? In this conversation that we are having at this table about how things work, we're not talking about how we should talk to the individuals that are going through those hard times, right? And this is not meant to be a source of comfort for an emotional problem from an emotional standpoint. It's meant to be a way to understand just a little bit of how the world does really work. Right? So we in Judaism very firmly believe that we are not here for instant gratification, and we're not meant to get things immediately and in this world, but rather it's for delayed gratification. There's a greater purpose for a later point in time. So therefore, trying to understand why the righteous person thinks this person's an unbelievable human being, why are they suffering? So because there's a delayed gratification that's going to come in the next world. Now, talking to a person that is in the middle of such a terrible situation that I can't even imagine what that's like. Obviously, that's terrifying, right? We wouldn't say it'll be okay. The next world's a better place, right? Things will be fine, right? Rav Matzasio Solomon, he should be well. He's not so well right now, but he should be well. He's the mashgiach, the spiritual advisor, let's call it, for the Lakewood Yeshiva. He is originally from England. He is a tremendously insightful individual in human nature and caring for others. Unbelievable person. I took this course this past year about learning different things about psychology, trying to understand, help our students is more to be as, a little bit of bigger eyes and a bigger heart for students and seeing them and the struggles they might be experiencing that are just being manifest in the classroom and trying to reach them. And if they actually need professional help, being able to refer them out and things like that. That was this training program. And in that program, there was one of the presenters, his name is Dr. Pelkovitz, and he told us that there was a circumstance with a young boy who had gone to a sleepaway camp and was molested by his counselor. And the kid was totally traumatized, a serious trauma. And the parents, when counselor got arrested, the whole deal, right? There was no stops held back. It was very clear, and action was taken, and it was really serious. But now they need to help the kid. And he was a 15-year-old, a 12-year-old, somewhere between 12 and 15, and he needed serious help. And he wouldn't talk to anybody, didn't want to talk to them. They called Dr. Pelkovitz, who's a real professional, and he said, "Okay, I want you to do two things. He says, I want you to bring him right now to Rabbi Solomon and talk to Rabbi Solomon. So then I'm going to talk to him." So the first time he saw the child, this kid, he said it was like he was curled up, like almost like a fetal position on a chair, totally would not make eye contact, would not respond. They almost practically had to carry him into Rabbi Solomon's office. He spent 20 minutes with Rabbi Solomon, came out, and Dr. Pelkovitz said it looked like he had been through 4 months of therapy already, just in the 20 minutes that he spoke to Rabbi Solomon. Said, and he looked at this the second time he's interacting with me. He said, you look entirely different. He says, I know. What did Rabbi Solomon tell you? So he learned this particular chapter in Pirkei Avos and Ethics of Our Fathers. And he told me that my soul is clean and I didn't do anything wrong. And he gave me tremendous words of encouragement. He told me to say 2 things of Tehillim every single day, and I'm going to meet with him again in a month, or something like that, right? So we're talking, and the ability that Rabbi Solomon had to just reach in a heartbeat and be able to draw this child out and help him in such a deep and meaningful way in such a short time is unbelievable. Just to give you a picture of who we're talking about. So he said, and he's a big rabbi, he knows it all, right? And the real deal. And he said in public, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people listening to his speeches whenever he would talk. And he said there's a time and place for everything, even for heresy. Because when is it appropriate to be heretical? Is when you're sitting at the bedside of an ill person. He says, you do not tell them God is a good and everything is fine, it'll work out in the end. That is not, you tell him this doesn't make any sense. I don't know why you're suffering. I don't know why it's terrible that you're going through this. Even though on the logical side, you can say, I don't know, from a very intellectual position, we can say, listen, there's a reason why, we don't understand the reason, and it's for a benefit somehow, somewhere, right? But that's not what you tell them. You can't tell that to people, right? There's no question. Here, we're trying to understand just a little bit of the mechanics of the world at large. And you're right, to talk to a person like that, we can't do that. That would be a crime. That would be a crime. So therefore, right here, we're just trying to understand how the world works in an objective sense. That way we can at least understand a little bit how God functions with us in this world. That's really the goal. So I don't think we're saying anything different. I think we're agreeing, right, that there's a time and place. You're right. This is not the response to the suffering. This is how we can, in an objective manner, understand why things do happen in general. Any questions? I'm good. Okay. Now, the Mifta Melio adds in a very interesting point over here, which is, I think we'll just finish off with this. And he says as follows. He says, we have a pasuk. This pasuk we say is Poseach es yodecha, open up your hands, umasbiya alechol chai rotzon, and give sustenance to all those that are living according to your will. Meaning, what that means is that God fulfills the will of the creations of mankind. This is even talking about animals. Animals need to eat as well. So God fulfills the will of his creations. What's the will? That we must be, we have to be saveh, we have to be satiated, we have to be full, we have to be taken care of. And obviously, it's obvious that two people can have contradictory desires, right? I don't know if it's his example, but this example that I've heard about this is, if you ask 150 people about, whatever the lottery's up to, I have no idea, right? You want to win the lottery. Each person will say yes, right? Or 150 that bought a ticket, right? They're holding a ticket in their hand. You want to win the lottery? Oh, yeah, of course, this is what I want. This is what I want, right? But now you have 150 people that are contradicting each other. Only one person's going to win, right? And something has to happen. God's going to decide whoever it is the ticket's going to in their hand. That's the person that's going to win. So now, how does God fill everybody's will, right? Can't really fill each person because I have the same thing. I also want to win the lottery. Yeah, why not? Right? He's a few $1 million. Why not? So how does that work? How does that work in a person's desires and how Hashem seems to fulfill a person's desires? So his first step is that a person, really the way it works is the person with the greatest desire was the strongest desire that if he had to measure, this guy's got 10% to win the lottery, right? He's just hoping. He doesn't really care, he knows not going to win, so he doesn't really care. Then you have the guy that's, he's screaming and crying, you gotta give me the lottery, gotta win the lottery. So his will is much higher. So he might have a better chance, right? Putting all other factors on the side, we just put in a vacuum of just about sheer will, right? So then the person with the greatest will was going to win, right? So he says that this is really what's happening when a person does a good deed. Hashem says, okay, I want to reward you, but I want to reward you based on your will. Masbiya l'chol chai ratzon, based on your will. So what do you want? What is the will that you have? So this evil person, his will, he is not thinking about the next world. He doesn't care. So even if he does something, because he had a good speech. He got a good speech, so he went outside and he said, okay, here's my good deed for the day, and he does a good deed because he knows that God likes it, right? All right, but at the end of the day, what does he really want? He really wants to be happy in his life, and everything should be hunky-dory, everything should be perfect, no suffering, no problems, everything should go smooth, every business deal that he engages in should be successful, and so on, right? Hashem says, okay, I'll give you your ratzon, your will, that's what you want, here it is, I'm happy to provide. At the same time, the righteous person who says, I want to do these things, what is his real deep desire? What is his ratzon? What is his real will? His real will is to connect to Hashem. So therefore, Hashem pushes his reward to the next world. Okay? Again, it touches on that idea of why bad things might happen to him, but the purpose is that Hashem is really just providing for each person what they really truly want. So that the evil person, those kind deeds that he has, what does he want out of them? He wants a reward. Yeah, of course he wants a reward. But what is the reward that he really wants? Hashem says, I'll open my hands. I'm going to satiate to all living creatures. Ratzon, according to their will? What's the will that you want? Oh, you want this world? No problem. It's yours. So even though he says we've mentioned this concept that there really is technically no reward for positive deeds in this world. All rewards for good actions really are in the next world. We mentioned that at least a month and a half ago now. Okay, and the schar mitzvah b'hai al maleka. There's no reward for mitzvahs now. And we talked about the reward for one mitzvah is really doing another mitzvah, and that's the greatest reward, and so on. Right? So he says that concept really depends on the person. If what I want is that I should do a good deed because that way I want to connect, so Hashem's great, I'll give you another opportunity so you can connect with me again and again and again. But if the person that's doing it is just, okay, that's what I got to be a nice guy, and he does something nice, okay, there's a reward that is deserved for that. But what do you want? You want things in this world, okay, so you get that too. So it's really just dependent on what we really, truly, deeply want. And that's what his point that he wants to make, is how we can understand why a bad person might have positive things going for them, all because this is really just deeply their will. And Hashem says, I try to fulfill as much as you can, as whatever the calculations are, the will of each and every person. Thank you all for coming. I hope you enjoyed. And Hashem, we'll see you next week. If you have any questions, I'll take those too.
Robert, boil it down for a minute.
Sure.
What's